The Blue Jackets play better but get a worse result as they fall to the Ottawa Senators and fall out of a playoff spot. We talk about that on today's Locked on Blue Jackets.
You're Locked on Blue Jackets, your daily podcast on the Columbus Blue Jackets, part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to Locked on Blue Jackets, part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day. I am, as always, your host Jay Foster, here to give you the good, the bad, and the ugly about your favourite team and mine, the Columbus Blue Jackets. Before we get things started, I want to thank everyone for making this your first listen of the day every single day. Locked on Blue Jackets is free and available on all podcast platforms and over on YouTube. We have to talk about last night's game, which was frustrating in many ways. Not the least of which is that they should have won that game. Not necessarily that they played well enough to win the game, but they should have played well enough to win the game, right? But they didn't. They fell just short. I thought it was a much better effort than the game against the Canucks. Both, defensively, goaltendingly, offensively, not quite, but it was a better effort. They should have won. The Sens were the better team, but only slightly. I really thought that we were going to get another comeback. So I want to talk about that. I want to talk about what went right, what went wrong, and the path that this team now has to have to make the playoffs. They have fallen out of the playoff spot because the Sharks decided not to respect me, and they let the Rangers win. So the Rangers now have that second playoff spot, which obviously we don't want. So we'll talk about what they need to happen going forward. But let's talk about the game first off, because honestly, not a terrible game. They outworked the Senators. I thought their penalty kill was good. The power play did nothing, but I kind of expect that at this point. The people who are scoring are the people who are meant to be scoring are scoring for the most part. Zach Werenski with 2 more assists, which I believe puts him at 72 points. He's not going to break Artemi Panarin's record, I don't think, because he would need to have, I think, 15 or 16 points in his last 10 games, which is not out of the realm of possibility, but is a lot harder now than it was, a month ago when he was basically putting points together at will. But it's still, again, an excellent season from Werenski. I thought Werenski was good in the game last night. I like him and Matejchuk together a lot, actually. Let's talk about that first, because that was one of the good things. Obviously not ideal. Dante Fabro out. Sounds like he's a little bit banged up. Blue Jackets have 2 days off now. I don't think they play again until Tuesday, so that's good news for Fabro getting healthy. But I don't hate Werenski and Matejchuk together. They had some adventures. I think, was it the second goal, the Drake Batherson goal, where Matejchuk got beat by... Oh, no, excuse me. It was the 3-1 goal. He got beat by Shane Pinto, kind of barreling down the side. Couldn't, welcome to the NHL, kid, right? You play on the top pairing, you're gonna face top opponents, right? I'm not mad. I'm frustrated at how that went, but I'm not mad. I'm not surprised. You're gonna have these welcome to the NHL moments. The kid's got 40 NHL games under his belt, if that. Got burnt by Pinto. Jake Sanderson just in the right place. I don't know what Werenski was doing on that play. Again, it was kind of an adventure from everyone, but for the most part, I did like that pairing together. Stevenson and Christensen was what it was. I haven't really had any issues with that pairing. I've liked it a lot as the second pairing going forward, or at the beginning of the season. Good to see Christensen get back into it. I hate that it was kind of at the expense of Dante Fabro, because I do think that Werenski and Fabro have been just money together. But I don't think like, I don't think putting Fabro in this game would have led to a win, right? But I liked Matejchuk and Werenski together. I thought Matejchuk had a really good game. He hit a little bit of a wall for a while there, and I don't know whether it's, playing with Zach Werenski is kind of like a cheat code, or whether he's kind of found his second wind or what, but I liked him in the Canucks game. I liked him last night. I think he had a really strong weekend. And that's a good sign for the future, right? Is, he hit this wall. I don't think he's been fully healthy for a minute now. Seems like he's kind of gritted his teeth and got through it, right? Which is good news. For the most part, I thought the team was a lot better defensively than they were against Vancouver. It would be hard to be worse, I think. I thought the goaltending was, again, the defense was not quite as good as it needed to be. The goaltending was not quite as good as they needed it to be. Daniil Tarasov, I thought, was passable. Like, mid always sounds really, like, derogatory, but he was just kind of mid. He had an 889 save percentage, 3 goals on 27 shots, but I thought he had a really great second period. And, like, first goal, deflection, I believe. Second goal, I want to say also a deflection. And then that third goal, the Sanderson goal, Pinto fires it off Tarasov's pads, and then it just bounces in, right? Or it, like, Sanderson puts it in. It doesn't just bounce in. Like, 3 tough goals, honestly. Would I have liked him to have the first one? Yeah, probably. Would I have liked him to have the second one? Probably a little bit more, yeah. But I'm not mad at Tarasov for this. And I talked about this a little bit on Twitter as well. Like, dude hasn't played in 2 weeks. We've talked about it kind of at length on the show. He's a guy that plays better the more he plays. But he's been sitting there for 2 weeks, and it feels insane to me that you have this tandem of goalies, one who plays well when he plays more, and one that, as well as he's played for the most part this season, struggles a lot with fatigue, with durability. I don't understand this need to run Elvis into the ground when you have Tarasov there. And I know that Tarasov has underperformed this season, but I do think it is kind of a what do you call it, like a self-fulfilling prophecy almost, of a vicious cycle is what I want, is that he plays badly so he doesn't get to play, which means he's rusty, which means that when he does get into a game he plays badly, which means they don't play him again for 2 weeks, and if you get into a cycle of, I know that Elvis has to be the number one goalie, and you have to be able to expect number one goalie things from the guy that you're paying $5.5 million a year. But I believe Elvis is already up on, like, he's 11 games away, so he's not going to hit his career high in games played. He might hit his career high in games started. So he started 48 games so far this season, and his career high is 56 that he started in 2021-22, which I believe was the first year without Korpisalo. I might be misremembering that, but that was like his first year as actual starter, and then he started 27. The season after that, he was injured for a lot of that season, and he was sick, and he was, not doing great. Last season, started 40 games, so he's already up on that. But, if Elvis is a goalie that you can only play for 50 to 55 games, fine. You have to get more comfortable playing your backup, right? You have to, for the sake of Elvis's durability, for the sake of your backup. Like, I don't know what happens with the goaltending next season. Sounds like something's going to change. I don't know what that going to change is. Do you buy Elvis out? I think that really depends on how this season finishes, because I do think Elvis the numbers don't super support it. He's got an 895 at the minute. Last season, he finished with an 897. I do think he is an improved goalie this year. I think he looks a lot more confident. I think the team is giving him some run support, which I think was a big problem last year. Was he allowed a goal and the team was like, "Oh God, well we can't possibly be expected to score a goal," and it would just kind of spiral from there. But this year, typically speaking, if the team allows 2 or 3 goals, they're going to score 3 or 4. Typically, obviously that wasn't the case last night, but you look at the Canucks game, for example. Elvis wasn't good in that game. The Blue Jackets got run support. They were like, oh, okay, well, if Elvis is allowing 5, 6 goals, then we'll just score 6 or 7 goals, and that's what they did. So I didn't mean to get into the Elvis of it all in this segment, but like the goaltending something's going to change. I don't know what's going to change, but I thought Tarasov, for a guy that hadn't played in 2 weeks, I thought he was fine. I wanted him to be a little bit better, but I feel like you can't really expect him to be a little bit better, considering he hasn't played in 2 weeks. I think he's played like twice in the entire month of March, maybe 3 times now. But like that's about what I expected from a guy who hasn't played in 2 weeks, and a guy that we've seen all season long doesn't play well when he doesn't get to play a lot. It's the Korpisalo of it all. The more Korpisalo plays, the better he is, typically. Or at least that was the case when he was with the Blue Jackets. I haven't really paid attention to him much this season. He's been with the Bruins. I know I think he's got 20 wins, which is pretty impressive. But I might be mistaken about that. Anyway, the Blue Jackets were just not good enough. And I mean that as in just as in a little amount, not as in they just didn't do it, right? They had it in them to force overtime. That was kind of my thought as the game was going on. I was like, right, well, what they're going to do is they're going to force overtime and then lose in overtime, probably to a really annoying goal from God, I don't even know. It's going to be a really annoying goal from, I don't know, like Mike Amadio, for example, or Adam Gaudette. But they didn't. They held on. Again, Linus Ullmark was very good in this game, which is unsurprising. He's a very good goalie. 2 goals on 31 shots. I think he has like a 9-10 save percentage on the season. So I'm not surprised that he was good. I'm not surprised that he did better than Tarasov. And I don't even think that putting Elvis in tonight would have made it any better or worse, right? I think probably it would have been the same result. But they just kind of fell short. I don't think anything specifically went wrong in this game. Would have been nice to see the power play get going. Would have been nice if, I feel like Adam Fantilli had a couple of really nice chances. Provorov had a really nice chance. Don't remember who was shooting. Was it Dmitry Voronkov, I think? Was this close to tying the game. And then Linus Ullmark just kind of threw himself vaguely in the direction of the puck and it stayed out. Credit to Ullmark for making a great save, but 9 times out of 10, that's a goal, right? So Blue Jackets played about as well as they needed to win and got unlucky. The Senators played as well as they needed to win, and I don't know that I would call that win lucky necessarily. I think they earned the win, but I don't think there would have been there wouldn't have been outrage, I don't think, from Senators fans if the score had been flipped, right? I think you could have, especially going into kind of about halfway through the third period, I would say by that point in the game, I think it was very much a case of well, anyone could win this, right? Kromachenko makes it a game, halfway through the third period, and the team just can't find that final marker. But they don't allow an empty net goal, which is important. Because I feel like so many times this season, or maybe not just this season, but in general, and this might be recency bias, this might be me kind of just talking out my butt. So many times this season, the Blue Jackets have got momentum, they've got momentum. They pull the goalie, they immediately allow an empty net goal. and then there goes the momentum, right? But they pushed all the way to the end. They had that. They were this close. I had I had a good feeling about, they had that timeout with 7 seconds left, and I was like, you know what? This feels like the perfect time for like a 0.2 seconds remaining goal that everyone is mad about. They didn't do it, but like, it's a frustrating loss because every game feels like a must win, right? And they got some help earlier on. The Islanders lost in regulation. They needed the Rangers to lose, which they didn't do, but that was, again, that's out of the hands of the Blue Jackets. But like, if they'd won, they'd still be in a playoff spot. They didn't win. Like, I was talking to one half of Locked On Canadians about this on Blue Sky yesterday, and he was like, my thought now is just win. You can't depend on getting help from out of town scoreboards. The Blue Jackets have been extremely lucky this season with out of town, or extremely lucky in the past 2 weeks, let's say, with out of town scoreboards. Montreal has fallen off a cliff. Detroit has forgotten how to win. The Islanders went on a mini hot streak and then decided, actually, no, we don't want it. We don't want the playoffs. Like, the Rangers have been up and down all season long. And like, how big is it now that I want to talk about the standings in a second here, but like, it feels huge that the Blue Jackets went 1-3 against the Rangers this season. I think that's gonna come back to haunt them. They went I think they went 1-2 against the Canadians, or like 1-1 against the Canadians this season. That feels huge. They lost a game to the Red Wings. They lost a game to the Bruins. They lost at least one game to the Islanders. I think they're 2-1 against the Islanders at the minute. But it could get to the point where, like, the Blue Jackets' last game of the season is the Islanders. It could get to a point where that game is who makes the playoffs. Not necessarily that it's going to be the Blue Jackets versus the Islanders, but it could come down to, if the Blue Jackets win the final game of the season, they're in. And that's not good for my blood pressure. It's not good for anyone's blood pressure, but it would be a lot of fun because this team isn't out yet, and I feel like we've spent a lot of the last 2 weeks being like, oh, it's so over, it's so over, it's so over. They won against the Islanders and they were so back. They won against the Canucks and they were so back. And then they lose to the Ottawa Senators and you're like, and it's over again. There's a real, and I'm guilty of this as well, of like, there's a real roller coaster of we're alive, but we're dead, but we're alive, but we're dead. Blue Jackets are currently sitting just outside of the playoff picture. So Ottawa increased their lead on that wildcard 1 spot. They are at 83 points. The Rangers are 6 points behind them with 77 points, but they have 2 games in hand over everyone, basically everyone chasing them. So they've played 74 games. The Canadians are at 75 points with 72 games played. The Blue Jackets are also at 75 points with 72 games played. The Islanders at 74 points with 72 games played. The Red Wings at 74 points with 73 games played. And then I think we'll count the Bruins, the Penguins, and the Flyers are all at 69 points, which is 8 points out of a playoff spot right now. So I think we'll go ahead and we'll shuffle those guys off. Bruins on a 5-game losing streak at the minute, which is rough. Blue Jackets are still right there. They are 2 points out, and they've got 2 games in hand over the Rangers, who are holding that second wildcard spot. Once again, they need out of town help here, but that's going to be true for the rest of the season, right? Like, that's how this works. They had it. They were in charge of their own destiny, and then what they decided to do was lose 6 games in a row and get shut out for like 3 out of 4 games. Like, again, if they go 500 on this losing streak, very different conversation. But in terms of tonight, obviously the Blue Jackets don't play for a couple of days, but they are going to be in competition with other teams. Montreal plays tonight. They play Florida, who I believe Montreal has won both of their games against Florida so far this season. They won 4-0 on December 28th, and then they played on March 15th and won 3-1. So they've still got 2 more games to play. But we could really do with the Panthers winning that one. because they need to keep pace with Montreal and hopefully overtake them. Because again, Montreal has the head-to-head record, and they also have more regulation or overtime wins than the Blue Jackets, because the Blue Jackets love to win in a shootout, apparently. The Islanders are playing Carolina tonight as well, so we could do with Carolina winning there. And that's kind of it for tonight. Tomorrow, there's only 4 games, and the only 2 Eastern teams are the New Jersey Devils, who are, I think, out of reach at this point, and the Flyers, who I think are out of the race. So Blue Jackets don't play again until April 1st, which we'll talk about in a couple episodes time. But on April 1st, the Panthers and the Canadiens play again. So there's another game that we could really do with the Panthers winning. The Islanders play the Lightning again. Now, they just lost to the Lightning last night, and Detroit is playing St. Louis, who apparently will never lose again. So there's going to be a lot of scoreboard watching over the next couple of days, I think. Again, Blue Jackets not out of it. They have the eighth strongest schedule remaining in the NHL, which I think is decreased as they've now gotten rid of, they're done with the Panthers, they're done with the Lightning. I'm pretty sure like their remaining schedule is getting easier, but it's not getting easy, right? They still have 2 games to play against the Capitals. They still have 2 games against the Senators. I believe they still have a game against the Leafs. And I believe they have a game against the Avalanche as well. Like, they've got some tough games left. It's not the worst schedule we've ever seen. And like I said, getting through the Lightning and the Panthers, and I think they're done with the Rangers as well. They've got some quote unquote easy games left, but they've also got some really tough games left. So it's going to be really important how they respond. They need to win this game on Tuesday against the Predators. That's one of your quote unquote easy games. They have to take points from Ottawa. They have to take points from the Islanders. I think they've got one more game against the Islanders, and that's, again, it's the final game of the season. It's going to be an important one. In terms of who else they've got to play, I should know the schedule by now, and I just don't. They've got, 10 games left, I think. So let's pull up the schedule for April, because how is it April already? Jeez. Okay, so the Blue Jackets have the Predators, the Avalanche, and the Leafs this week, and the Senators. They play the Senators on the second half of a back-to-back again, which is so annoying. Then they've got Senators again. They've got a game against Buffalo, 2 games against Washington. They've got a back-to-back there as well. Game against the Flyers and a game against the Islanders. So what's that? 1, 2, 3, 4 games against teams below them in the standings. 6 games against teams above them in the standings. 6 home games, 4 away games. You have to win 6 of these games. Like, ideally, you need to win at least that one against the Islanders and one of the games against the Senators. But you also need to win, for my money anyway, they need to win 6 of their last 10 games to make the playoffs. And a lot of that depends on how many games the Rangers win, how many games the Canadiens win, how many games the Islanders win. Like, there's still a lot of moving pieces, and it's going to be tough for the Blue Jackets. It's not out of reach yet, right? They can still make it. I wish it was less stressful than this, but also on the flip side of that, like, it's March 30th. They're still playing meaningful hockey. And that's kind of what I've been saying basically since Thanksgiving, I think, is, man, when was the last time this team was playing meaningful hockey on this day, right? Because I feel like last season, by the time Thanksgiving showed up, the Blue Jackets were basically dead in the water already, right? Christmas showed up, the Blue Jackets were dead in the water. But they've been playing meaningful hockey all season long. They are right in the thick of a playoff race. It's going to be a bummer if they fall just short of the playoffs, like they fell just short last night, but what a season that they've had. right? Look how much the young guys have grown. Don Waddell knows what he needs to do to improve this team. Can he do it? That's a conversation for the summer. But this team is not out of it yet. It genuinely might go to the last day of the season, which again, awful, stressful, hate it. But from an academic sense, like my head thinks it's great. My heart thinks it's going to give out with the with the stress, right? Blood pressure, extremely unhappy. But logically, I'm like, yeah, this is great. It means something to this team. It means something to the fan base. Like, I think the league is mostly rooting for the Blue Jackets. I don't know that, the Islanders or the Canadians or the Red Wings or the Rangers are necessarily rooting for the Blue Jackets, but it feels like everyone else is like, yeah, the Blue Jackets should get in. That'll be a really great, fun story. So we'll see how it goes. I'll be back tomorrow. That's all I've got for today. Tomorrow we're gonna do kind of a little bit of a Monsters Monday. We'll check in with the Cleveland Monsters, and we'll check in with how the Blue Jacket prospects are doing in their respective junior playoffs or European playoffs, or I don't believe any of the Blue Jackets prospects made it to the Frozen Four, but we'll check in with all of those guys. We'll do a little prospect watch here on Locked On Blue Jackets, so make sure you come and hang out for that. Thank you for listening to this episode, for making it your first listen of the day every single day. Locked On Blue Jackets is free and available on all podcast platforms and over on YouTube. I've been Jay Foster. You can find me on Twitter at _Jacob Foster, JAKOBFORSTER. You can find me also at Locked On Blue Jackets, LO_Blue Jackets on Twitter, where I can now safely, I think, talk about watching the game, because the Blue Jackets only won when I wasn't watching for a couple of games, and then I stopped watching last night and they still lost. So it's not me. I'm not cursing this team, so I'm allowed to watch the games again, which is fun and good, but we'll be talking about that over at LO_Blue Jackets. If you have comments, questions, criticisms, email me at lockedonbluejackets@gmail.com. Thank you once again for listening, and until tomorrow, make sure you stay locked on.